10 years ago today, a very special game came out. One that would introduce me to a series I would come to love. Today, we honor this game. Arguably, and in my personal opinion, one of, if not the best games in the Sonic franchise to date. Sonic Colors for the Wii.
Take off at the speed of sound. Bright lights, the colors all around. I'm running wild, living fast and free. Got no regrets inside of me. Not looking back, not giving up, not letting go. I'll keep on running. I'm gonna reach for the stars, although they look pretty far. I'm gonna find my own way and take a chance on today. The sky would star so bright, the colors feel so right. I've never felt like this. I'll keep on running. The sky would star so bright, the colors feel so right. Just take my hand, we're gonna reach for the stars tonight.
I feel like it's important to get my history with the game down first. Back when red boxes were still common enough to have video game rentals, I used to rent games for the Wii. It was my first real console after all. Sure, I had a SNES before, but the Wii was the first one that was really mine. I had been enjoying Mario Kart Wii for a good month by that point when I'd spotted something on the red box. Sonic and Stelia All-Stars Racing for the Wii. At that point, I was sold on the game. I loved racing games, and I still love that game to this day. But that was just the beginning, for you see, my sister, back when she used to actually play video games with me, didn't really enjoy that game too much. But when she saw Sonic Colors in that red box, all I can assume she thought was, "Oh, look, I recognize that," and she persuaded me to rent it. And I fell in love. Everything from its amazing soundtrack to gorgeous visuals hooked me, and on top of that, it was very beginner-friendly. Played that game for hours that day. Coming back around 9 years later, with games like Sonic 06 and Sonic Mania under my belt, it's time I really head back and see what truly made this game so great to me and to many others. Great enough to rival and even beat Sonic Mania in many regards. Let's start with the first things that hit you when you turn on the game, its wonderful soundtrack. Heck, even before you open the game itself, you're hit with a wonderful jingle. And then, the title screen hits you. Sonic running through a beautiful backdrop of space, the Wisps alongside him. We'll talk about them later. This immediately showcases the visual style of the game, high contrast, and bright colors. Now, let's get started, shall we? And what a way to start! We're thrown immediately into Tropical Resort, the center of... As I was saying, you're immediately thrown into the game, and as such, let's start with one of the most important parts of said game, its control. From the very moment you push that analog stick forward, or up on the D-pad, if you're one of those poor souls using a Wiimote, you can already begin to feel Sonic's momentum and get accustomed to it. Sonic really feels like he has a lot of momentum with him, and as such he feels more fluid, more like the classic games, but then again, it isn't too dissimilar from Unleashed, aside from one major thing that'll really help you control this momentum, the double jump. Now the double jump, unlike its future appearances, feels like a natural addition to the game, due to its emphasis on 2D platforming, and its momentum being a bit more than most newer players could adjust to out of the box. This move lets you fully manipulate your momentum in the air. Overshooting a platform, double jump back, and you will not only be able to reach it with ease, but gain a little bit of height. And I know I shouldn't compare this to future games, but other games like Generations and Unleashed feel a bit off without this ability, as it feels so natural to his moveset. Sonic also retains his boost from Unleashed, however it does work a bit differently. Instead of picking up rings to fill a boost meter, you collect white wisps. Told you we would get to these guys later. These you can get by defeating enemies, or through these neat looking red capsules. There are 8 varieties of Wisps, but we'll hold off on talking about the other 7 until they're relevant, as, spoiler alert, though they are integral to the game, you don't really need to use them too much. Anyway, back to Tropical Resort, and amidst the beautiful aesthetics comes a great piece of music which has been playing in the background the whole time. It is our first stage, and we get 2 levels in the beginning before we even get a glimpse of the story, which is very interesting. In most cases, you tend to get directly into the story. Hey, wait a second, what's that thing behind the capsule? It's a red ring. Oh boy, let's talk about these real quick. Red rings are optional collectibles that are actually quite interesting. They may not do much by themselves aside from add a little bit of score, but collect enough and you unlock extra playable levels in the Sonic Simulator, the not quite 2-player mode of the game. I won't go too into depth on these because it just unlocks extra levels that net you the Chaos Emeralds after collecting them, which, yes, they'll let you do play as Super Sonic in the main levels, but I really don't care because I don't need that. It's optional, and yeah, it's a cool bonus, but it's not really super important. You don't need it to complete anything, so go for them if you want, but I don't go for them. Anyway, back on track this time, we finally get to learn something about why we're here at... Hey wait, we already did this joke. Anyway, this is the first Sonic game to use a new voice cast, as we're out of 4Kids' Reign of Terror, with Sonic being played by Roger Craig Smith, who, hot take, is the best voice actor for Sonic, as he really gets the sound of a more carefree teen. Trust me, I would know. Tails' new voice actress is a huge step up from the Adventure Days with Kate Higgins, and, well, of course Mike Pollock is here with his absolutely perfect reprisal of Eggman. So, why are Sonic and Tails here? Well, simply put...
Because Eggman plus secretly built amusement park equals evil plot for us to foil.
And foil an evil plan they shall, and that starts by taking care of Orbot and Cubot over there, the new henchmen of the Good Doctor. Orbot is a very interesting fellow, clearly an upgraded SA-55 from Unleashed. He now hosts some motion in that orb of his. 90% of it is still Snark though. Cubot is really only there for comic relief, but he isn't necessarily annoying enough for me to want to break my TV whenever he's on screen. Oh, wait, what's that Wisp doing? It sent Sonic off at a burst of light, incredible speeds. That there is our first colored Wisp type, Cyan Laser, which I'll just call Laser now for simplicity. Laser is a fundamentally simple Wisp, letting you choose a direction before blasting off at hyperspeed for a few seconds while being entirely invulnerable. What makes this different from the Boost is that, 1, it's a lot faster, and B, unaffected by gravity. However, it does have a very interesting quirk that depending on whether you use it in 2D or 3D section, you aim it differently. 2D you can angle it up and down, while in 3D you can only angle it in front of you, left or right. Now because I have no idea where to fit this in, let's talk about the level structure real quick. There's a level map in this game which is nice, and all the areas look really beautiful, but there are just too many stages in each area, with 6 acts and a boss. The worst part is, some of these stages are only a minute long in some cases. That's some Sonic Forces level length stages there. Anyway, let's get back on to the rest of the game, okay?
I wish I knew what you were saying, little guy. Or gal. Or whatever you are.
Tails accepts all genders, if only it was that way in the US. So, Tails has run into this Wisp.
Wisps?
No, Wisps, with a W.
Do you guys mind? So Tails met up with this Wisp named Yacker, and Little Fox is working on a translator to find out what the Wisp is saying, so you can understand it. The mistranslations will lead to some jokes, not all of which are good. But before long, we've reached the first boss, and it will really show one of the shortcomings of this game, the boss fights. Though interesting, they are pitifully easy, as this one barely took any time to beat. I'm just gonna show you the whole clip real quick. Well, now that we're done with that robot, let's move on to the second world of the game.
Welcome to the Sweet Mountain. Insulin will be provided at a marginal extra cost. And by marginal, we mean enormous.
A marginal extra cost, you say? Is that more or less expensive than what it would cost in the US? Ah, Sweet Mountain. A very visually distinct level. One full of food, and true American dream. Okay, I'll stop making jokes about the US. It's just so easy to do though. With this world, we're introduced into Yellow Drill and Orange Rocket, which I'll just call Drill and Rocket for simplicity's sake. Drill lets you dig into soft ground like these cakes and head through tubes inside cakes. It also lets you go underwater and swim. This is not important yet, we'll get to more of it later, but while underwater, your air will not deplete. Rocket lets you shoot off into the air at incredible speed and gently float back down. Not much else can really be said about it. But regarding rockets, there are some very interesting mechanics in this level. For example, candy missiles, which are just fun set pieces, more than anything. Each stage has something new, like a Spiral 2D level that forces you to stay somewhat precise, otherwise you have to repeat sections of the level. One that implements destructible yellow block that enemies can break by shooting, or that you can break by boosting. And long, stupid waiting sections. Act 4 is by far one of my least favorite stages in the game. So why is this? Its gimmick is standing on a button for 3 hours and waiting for platforms to move. No matter the series, a level like this would be awful, but considering it's a Sonic game, the sudden drop in speed makes it feel so much worse. The boss is an admiral or captain of a ship, I don't recall which one it actually is, but it's an interesting two-part fight. First, you have to navigate the ship and take it down, before eventually hitting the admin or captain or whatever it is. Just use the drill wisp to tunnel under him and win quickly and easily.
Next stop, the Starlight Carnival. The sheer scale of our illuminated space fleet is sure to make you feel small and insignificant by comparison.
In Starlight Carnival, you get to truly experience space, as well as amazingly colorful ships. In this zone, we get introduced to two more Wisps, Blue Cube and Green Hover, which, once again, I'll just call Cube and Hover for simplicity's sake. When activated, Cube lets you become a massive blue, cube, and crash down upon the ground with the might of Zeus, except without any cool thunder. Instead, you emit a large shockwave, which can destroy black crates and flip the state of blue blocks or blue rings to the opposite form. Blue rings do not add to your ring total, however they do add in score. Hover does as it says. When activated, you get to hover for a short time by holding the jump button. Pressing the boost button will let you perform the light speed dash when you're near a trail of rings. Overall, these two are some of the less useful Wisps in the game, with Cube by far being the least useful. To be absolutely fair, the Wisps don't have to have much of a use, but Cube by far is the worst in this regard. The stages themselves, however, are very dynamic, letting you go up and down and all around through these ships, and even through space, with a literal rainbow road that you run along in some acts. One act in particular introduces an interesting, albeit slightly boring gimmick, the Yellow Spring, or as the wiki calls it, the Mobile Spring. This special type of spring progresses along a set path and allows you to bounce higher by pressing the stomp button onto it. Later uses of it are more interesting, but the introduction to this gimmick is fine enough as it is. It also introduces the Motobugs. These zoomy boys are present in some sections and act merely as a method of giving the player boost energy and not much else. Large black Motobugs will also destroy all the other Motobugs on screen when defeated, so use that to your advantage. The boss of Starlight Carnival, however, is a freight carrier ship that you can attack through homing attacks or a laser. Don't get mistaken with the other freight carrier, which you use a rocket on, because I did in writing the script. He's not that hard to beat, just keep on homing attacking him and he'll go down. Other than that, and its gorgeous visuals, not much more is left to be said about Starlight Carnival, so let's move on.
Next stop, Planet Wisp. This attraction is currently off limits, as it is still under construction and may not be dangerous enough for visitors yet.
Planet Wisp deviates from the norm of the rest of the game, which is all clearly mechanical and fake, like actual theme parks are. This stage instead shows the process of which this mechanization occurs. And this is where we get to see the Doctor's evil plans at work. It also calls back to the past games with the nature versus technology aspect, much like the classics. And, calling back to the classics again, we even get a thematically appropriate Wisp joining us in this zone, Pink Spike. When activated, you turn into an even spikier ball, which can climb walls and replaces the boost with a spin dash. Yes, the spin dash is back, although it's not super useful in Spike form, mostly due to how it slows down on corners. Now as for the levels, most of them are fun, a lot of them including little sections of quick-stepping in a multi-layer path, which I always find interesting because it adds a little bit of extra depth to levels. Some of them are more precise, like that one cube platforming section that I die at repeatedly every time I play the game, regardless of how many times I've played the game. Also, quick question, what's with that purple goop? Why is it here? Is it a waste from Eggman's machines or is it natural? Anyway, this level is more focused on 2D than 3D, even more than the game is in general. It also really loves its rails, being used in many cinematic ways to transport you around its machinery. The boss for this area is literally the same fucking boss from Tropical Resort. There are almost no changes at all, so I won't really bring any attention to it. Overall, this level's beautifully serene, yet clashing against machinery every step of the way, and honestly, I really enjoy that about this stage.
Next stop, the Aquarium Park. This underwater attraction is the perfect place to commune with sea life and hopefully get chummy with a shark.
Aquarium Park is another beautiful stage, an aquatic wonderland however contained it may be. This area sees the return of a quintessential mechanic seen in several Sonic games prior, but one that had been oddly absent up until this point, water. However, it's fairly trivial in this game as you have many new ways of moving around in it. Firstly, your double jump becomes infinite, so you can effectively swim in this game. Now, don't think you suddenly have infinite air because you don't. The only way that you can pause the timer, however, is by using a drill wisp or if you're under the influence of fish that are orbiting you. Speaking of the drill wisp, it allows you free movement in water, much like soft soil, making water less of an issue and more of a mechanic extension, and also taking away some of the fear that tends to come with it. Along this, the moving spring makes its triumphant return for one more level. I mean, who could hate this gimmick? It's an auto-scroller that forces you to keep track of your position the entire time, therefore, you may be moving slow, but it's not that boring. The boss of this area reutilizes the Admiral of a submarine this time. The first phase is very similar to before, flipping a switch to bring down the sub. However, the Admiral this time is far harder, with the drill wisp being fairly important to actually being able to beat him. Otherwise, you'll have to wait until its own drill move stops. Overall, this is an aquatic wonderland with water mechanics that are actually good for a change.
Next stop, the Asteroid Coaster. Zoom along through and sometimes into space debris, then lose your lunch in 0G.
Careful for space debris, it's Asteroid Coaster time. The last main level in the game. Early on, Sonic and Tails stumble across a factory, inside of which what looks like millions of Wisps are having their energy leached out of them, slowly removing their hyper-go-ons. Yes, that's what it's called in canon. I personally think that naming scheme is dumb. But with this level, we get introduced to our final Wisp type, Purple Frenzy. And this one actually has lore to it. These Wisps originate from corrupted forms of other Wisps, i.e. Wisps that have had their hyper-go-ons extracted from them. This little detail definitely turns the story dark in the last part of the game, but it allows us to have one more interesting mechanic. These Wisps are considered out of control, and as such, will turn you into a rampaging monster of your own. One that does not stop moving, and is hard to control itself, and destroys all in its path, slowly growing as it wrecks more. Once again, the gameplay accentuates the story, as when you activate the Wisp, you feel like you're not in control of where Sonic goes or what he does anymore, which I'm sure is also what he's feeling while in this form. Anyways, on to levels themselves, and we're starting off with one of the more prominent gimmicks, the roller coasters. Aren't these fun? While in them, you can jump, or switch to an adjacent coaster by holding the direction and jumping. Just please be careful not to jump out of the coasters, it's all instant death down there. The levels also reuse a gimmick from Unleashed's Eggman Land, these little pusher blocks. However, instead of having a silly Eggman face on them, they blend into the background wall, which is I guess why they outline the pushers in a blue light, or blinking red when it's extending. These blocks can get a little tricky and may catch you off guard sometimes, but they aren't that hard to avoid. This level sees more 3D action than most other levels it seems, with some homing attacking of rocks in the middle of space, to running on artificial rings of metal, dodging a Motobug onslaught. One level is all about a choice between using the Spike Wisp or Cube Wisp. It also includes our best friend, the Yellow Spring! The last level in the area also boasts the only mini-boss in the game, although it isn't that hard once you find the pattern. The robot traps you in a gravity field that forces you to time your homing attack as to not get shocked. The main boss of the area, however, is literally just the same as the Starlight Carnival boss, with the addition of bouncy rocks, pretty much. Otherwise, use the same strategy there, homing attack it till it goes down, and use rocket to propel yourself at it for even more damage.
Critical systems failure. Repeat, critical systems failure. All attraction access is temporarily suspended. Please evacuate the park via the emergency exit ahead. This is all your fault.
Uh-oh, shit's going south. Better get out while you still can. Welcome to Terminal Velocity, the true final zone of the game. Although only 3 acts long, it's jam-packed with action. The first act has several minutes of fleeing from the crumbling park, with the return of several gimmicks, and I'll go in order for this one. First, the big laser guys we saw in Starlight Carnival. After that, we get more Motobugs. And lastly, the big heckin' chonker of a robot ready to smack you. It really seems like Eggman wants to stop us here.
At least let me stab your hand so you can come back in.
I know you're trying to be clever with this whole amusement park pun thing, but it's just coming off lame. So just say you're going to destroy us and stop embarrassing yourself.
Curse you, Sonic! Not only do you foil my plans, but you foil my speeches as well! I work hard on them! No matter, I will destroy you, and I will be victorious! Is that better?
Like a million times better. Thank you.
And with that, here we are at the final boss, the Nega Wisp armor. Despite what the doctor says, this thing ain't invincible, nor even that hard to deal with. It has only a few attacks, a cube attack, a laser attack, and a spike attack. I know he can combine cube and laser in this fight, but I've never gotten him to do that. After you dodge enough, Eggman will give you an opportunity to use your homing attack on his tendrils and work your way up to his cockpit, where you'll need to hit him 6 times. Now, you can also hit him as he's flailing around on the ground with a boost, cutting the cycles down to 3. Once you've done all of that, Eggman will start to enter a panic rage where his controls will lock up presumably. And then, it's all up to you to deal the final blow in the form of a full-color blaster. Just a note, if you let the bar run out, nothing happens. You get to do it again, so just don't worry about timing anything.
My head! Who turned out the lights?
At Eggman's incredible interstellar amusement park, you can feel comfortable knowing your safety is our number one.
Oh, shut up!
Uh-oh, seems like safety wasn't really his number 1 priority, as the park is falling apart at its seams. Make one last dash for it in Act 3. Only for it just to not be enough. But, lucky for Sonic, the Wisps save him. These freed Wisps also start giving back some of their own energy to the corrupted Wisps to turn them back. Also, if you look closely, you can see 2 different varieties of Wisps not in this version of the game, but rather in the DS version. Those being Red Burst and Purple Void, which doesn't change anything about this, it's just fun to point out. The Wisps return Sonic to the planet, where Tails rushes up to him to check if he's okay. Yacker says one last goodbye, and the Wisps are off to their own planets once more, freed from the clutches of Eggman.
we can relate. Now we're side by side, this is fate. I knew all along we'd find some way to communicate.
And that's the game right there. A wonderful product that was simple enough to bring in new fans, yet held enough for older fans to be satisfied and continue playing for years to come. This is without a doubt my favorite Sonic game in the series, easily topping Mania and the classics. This game was a dream to revisit. Knowing that this game turns 10 today makes me feel pretty old. As someone who grew up in the 16-bit era, calling this my favorite game of all time also means a lot. It means that it tops other games that I've been playing for even longer, like Super Metroid, Super Mario World, or Donkey Kong Country. And so it shall sit there. Maybe when I revisit some of those games my opinion will change, but hey, that's for another time. Thank you all for tuning into this very special video, and I really hope you all like this. It was my first attempt going out there and writing a script, and editing a review even, so feedback would be awesome. If you did like the video, please hit that like button. I can't tell you how much that helps me, being a small content creator and all. Seeing that people actually enjoy your content helps you really want to make more of it after all. Also, go ahead and drop suggestions for future games for me to review if you feel so inclined. Thank you all for watching, have a great day. Chen out.